You were probably told, at some point, to protect your bones as you got older by taking it easy on them. Go for evoke. Skip the impact. Here's the strange part. Taking it easy on your bones is very likely what's making them weaker. That's the paradox behind two exercises people ask about constantly: jump rope and rebounding on a mini trampoline. Which one actually protects your bone density after 60? Which one is safer on aging joints? By the end of this video, you'll have a real answer, not a guess. Stand up for a second. If you're somewhere you can. Feet about hip width apart. Let your full weight settle down through both heels into the floor. Notice that plane contact, heel meeting ground, doesn't feel dangerous. It isn't. It's one of the few things your skeleton has been quietly asking for the whole time you've been avoiding it. This video isn't about willpower. It's about physics, the specific mechanical signal that tells the inside of your bones to keep building. A 100-kilogram man, a former boxer, and an 81-year-old woman all made different decisions about how to deliver that signal. We'll walk through why, then put jump rope and rebounding side by side on every measure that actually matters after 60. Bone isn't fixed and finished. The way a steel beam is once it's poured. It's alive. It's constantly listening. In the 1960s, a researcher named Harold Frost proposed something he called the mechanostat. Think of it as an on-off switch built into your skeleton. Below a certain amount of mechanical strain, the switch stays off, and bone breaks down faster than it rebuilds. Cross a threshold, and the switch flips on. New bone gets laid down right where the load landed. Frost measured that threshold in microstrain, a unit for how much a material bends or stretches under load, too small to see, but real to the bone itself. His research put the on zone around 1500 to 3000 microstrain. A slow walk barely nudges that dial. Your hip's femoral neck, the short curved piece of bone at the very top of your thigh bone that carries your weight every time you stand on that leg, almost never crosses the threshold during walking. That's the first thing most people get wrong. Cardio and bone building are not the same signal, and your skeleton knows the difference even when you don't. Frost actually mapped 4 zones on that dial, not just one switch. Too little strain, and bone slowly thins with disuse. What he called the trivial loading zone. Cross into the physiologic zone, that 1500 to 3000 microstrain range, and bone holds steady or builds. Push into the overload zone, and bone builds fastest of all. Only past a much higher zone, one almost nobody reaches in ordinary training. Does loading turn pathologic and risk real damage? Here's why that matters for a heavier body. Specifically, more mass moving through the same motion means more strain reaching the bone per landing. That means the physiologic zone gets crossed sooner, not later. One viewer, describing himself as a 100-kilogram man with real jump rope limitation, assumed that meant impact was automatically off the table for him. The physics says something more precise. He likely needs less volume, not zero volume, to cross that same threshold. That's the first clue for how this comparison is actually going to go. If you're finding this useful, tell me your age or what you're working through in the comments. And subscribe to Legends of History for more physics of your body. So let's put jump rope and rebounding side by side, one measure at a time, starting with the one that matters most for the title question: how much of that mechanostat signal each one actually delivers. On raw bone loading stimulus, jump rope has the advantage. A hard floor doesn't absorb force. It returns nearly all of it straight back up through your shin and into your hip. You'll often hear that trampolining is 68% more efficient than running, credited to a NASA study. That study is real. It was published in 1980, led by researchers Bhattacharya, McCutcheon, Schwartz, and Greenleaf, comparing treadmill running to trampoline jumping, but it measured 8 young men, ages 19 to 26, in a single lab session, looking at oxygen use and heart rate, not bone density, not anyone over 30. It's a real finding about cardiovascular efficiency in young men. It was never a finding about bone, and repeating it as if it settles the bone density question is exactly the kind of misapplied claim worth watching for. A cushioned trampoline mat is engineered to do one job: absorb impact. That's genuinely good for your knees and lower back in the moment. But by the mechanostat's own logic, absorbed force is force your skeleton never fully receives. On this one measure, rope wins. On joint and tendon safety, the result flips completely. A viewer who describes himself as a former boxer put it plainly in a comment. He'd gotten very good at jump rope over the years, but as he aged, he kept pulling his calf muscle, badly enough to sideline him for months at a time. There's a measurable reason. Your calf muscle connects to your heel bone through the Achilles tendon, the thick, rope-like cord you can pinch between two fingers at the very back of your ankle, just above the heel. A 2023 biomechanics study, not yet through full peer review, measured that tendon stiffness in older adults against younger adults at matched effort. Older adults' Achilles tendons were, on average, 44% less stiff at the same activation level. A softer tendon absorbs and releases force differently under repeated impact. That's a real piece of why the same jump rope habit that felt effortless at 30 can start pulling your calf at 60. Same technique, different tissue. The boxer's fix wasn't to quit training. He switched his high-repetition impact work to a rebounder, kept his 3-minute rounds, and reports he's still training hard at 70. On this measure, the cushioned surface wins clearly, especially once tendons have already lost some of their spring. Now the harder question: does rebounding itself, not just theory about cushioning, actually build bone? Here it's worth being precise about what the strongest evidence actually tested. The clearest bone density trial is called LIFT-MORE, run by researcher Belinda Beck and colleagues, published in the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research in 2018. 101 postmenopausal women, averaging 65, with already low bone mass, were split into two groups for 8 months. One group did supervised, twice-weekly high-intensity resistance training paired with impact loading on a firm surface. The other did a gentle home program. The impact group's lower backbone density rose 2.9%. The gentle groups dropped 1.2%. At the hip, the impact group gained 0.3%, where the control group lost 1.9%. Across the full 8 months, there was not one injury in the high-intensity group. A separate 12-month trial, led by researcher Sarah Allison, had 50 healthy men, aged 65 to 80, each with one leg randomly assigned to daily hopping, the other leg doing nothing as an internal control. The hopping leg's hip bone strength rose 2.3%, against 0.7% in the resting leg. The detail worth sitting with: what improved most wasn't raw bone thickness. It was section modulus, a measure of bending strength. How well a shape resists snapping under a sideways force. The same principle that makes an I-beam stronger than a solid block of equal weight. Here's the honest gap. Both of those trials loaded a firm surface, not a cushioned trampoline mat. The strongest bone density evidence backs jump rope's category of loading directly. It doesn't yet exist at the same strength for rebounding specifically. And that gap deserves to be said plainly rather than smoothed over. Where rebounding pulls back ahead is a different outcome entirely, not whether you build a dense hip, but whether you break one. Falls are the leading cause of injury death in adults over 65. The numbers climb fast, from 24.7 deaths per 100,000 people at ages 65 to 74, to 373.3 per 100,000 by age 85 and up. According to the CDC's latest mortality data, a dense hip that never gets fallen on doesn't fracture. Two separate research teams, one led by Aragao, the other by Posh, ran supervised mini trampoline programs with older adults, one for 12 weeks, one for 14. Both found measurable improvement in the ability to catch and recover balance during a sudden forward stumble, on the order of 35% in one trial. Those trials ran shorter than 6 months, genuinely thinner evidence than the 8-month and 12-month bone trials above. The honest state of the research trampoline balance training looks real and promising, but hasn't been tracked over the longer timescales the bone trials have. One more axis, and it favors neither exercise outright. Your lymphatic system drains waste fluid out of your tissues, and unlike blood, it has no central pump. It moves because your muscles squeeze the vessels around it with every contraction, while a chain of one-way valves inside those vessels stops the fluid sliding backward between squeezes. Jump rope's rapid, continuous rhythm drives that squeeze at a steady, fast pace. Rebounding's alternating rise and near weightless moment produces a longer, slower compress and release cycle on the same pump. Different rhythm, same system, and there's no real reason to pick only one. So, back to the actual question this video opened with: which protects your bone density after 60 while staying safe on your joints. On raw bone loading stimulus, jump rope still comes out ahead when your joints and tendons can genuinely take it. On joint and tendon safety, rebounding wins clearly, especially once tendons have lost stiffness with age. On the piece that decides whether a fall turns into a fracture, rebounding is the only one of the two with real supporting data. There isn't a single winner here. There's a match between the tool and what your own joints, tendons, and fall risk currently allow. A 100-kilogram man with jump rope limitations doesn't need to abandon impact. He likely needs a cushioned start while building capacity, then progression toward a firmer surface as tolerance builds, which tracks Frost's own zones better than avoiding impact altogether. That's also the real answer to something worth naming direct. Fitness content tends to show adults jump roping and children bouncing on trampolines, as if rebounding were the lesser, kid-sized version of real exercise. The mechanistat doesn't know how old the trampoline in the backyard looks. A rebounder loaded correctly, with genuine bounce height and controlled landing, is a full adult training tool, not a children's toy borrowed by adults. Here's something worth trying tomorrow. Using the exact mechanism this video just walked through, find a firm, flat surface, not carpet, not a mat. Stand with your feet hip-width apart. Rise onto the balls of both feet, just an inch or two off the ground. Let yourself come back down under gravity, landing softly through the whole foot, knees slightly bent to absorb the last bit of the drop. Do that 10 times, slowly, paying attention to how the floor meets your heel each time. Track it for 2 weeks, same 10 reps, same time of day, and notice whether it starts to feel like nothing at all. That shift, from effortful to routine, is itself a small, honest signal your body is adapting to a load it didn't used to carry. The paradox from the start of this video was never really about trampolines beating jump rope, or the reverse. It was about a decades-old habit of protecting aging bone by doing less, when the physics says the opposite. Bone gets stronger by being asked to do more, in the right dose, at the right threshold, on whichever surface your own joints can currently handle. There's still a genuinely open question here. Researchers don't yet fully agree on whether that 1500 to 3000 microstrain threshold shifts as bone itself ages, or stays fixed while everything around it changes, which is exactly the kind of question this channel will keep digging into. If this helped, subscribe to Legends of History for more physics of your body. This is general information about bone loading mechanics and exercise research, not personalized medical guidance. If you have diagnosed osteoporosis, a recent fracture, or a balance condition, talk with your doctor or a physical therapist before adding jump rope or rebounding to your routine.